Now, as you've been hearing in our news bulletins throughout the morning, Donald Trump has been holding a rally in Iowa as he appears to be trying to deflect from the backlash over fatal shootings by immigration officers. Two protesters, Renee Good and Alex Pretti, have been killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota this month. The president has softened the stance, telling Fox News he's going to de-escalate a bit. And on his way to the rally in Iowa, Mr. Trump was asked about it.
Bottom line, everybody in this room, we view that as a very unfortunate incident, okay? Right. Everyone, unless you're a stupid person, very, very unfortunate incident.
I've been speaking with Natalie Nugent O'Shea, Executive Director and co-founder of the Celtic Junction in St. Paul, Minnesota, as tensions remain high in the Twin Cities following the fatal shooting of ICU nurse and US citizen Alex Pretti by federal agents and the subsequent scaling back of the US immigration enforcement operation. And Natalie began by telling me how the past few days in Minnesota have been since Alex Pretti's shooting.
It is unprecedented, I think is the word for 2026. You know, of course, this started with us when they shot Renee Nicole Good and then decided to tell stories about what actually happened when we have multiple eyewitnesses, we have multiple camera angles of what happened at that point. Now you double that up, of course, with the murder of Alex and the spin that is being put on it when, number one, Alex was not at a protest. And that's a fact that's been getting lost here. We've really not been dealing with this for just a few days. We've been dealing with this for a few weeks. And the energy here it's very charged. Everywhere it's charged. There's really nothing else that people are focused on. Most of normal life has stopped. We have maybe 60% or less of school children attending school. Many businesses have closed. Large sections of downtown are actually occupied by federal forces. So the energy, the atmosphere is like a third world country at certain points. And here we are in the middle of the United States, bordering Canada, prairie lands, and it really... Nobody had this on their bingo card. I think I could possibly say that.
Yeah, there is something dystopian about it, or it's like something we would have seen in an alternate history sci-fi movie, but yet it is happening. And you touched on the message coming from the Trump administration, and the official account of what happened to Alex Pretti has been challenged by the numerous video evidence that is available. The rush to describe it as domestic terrorism and saying he wanted to inflict maximum damage on federal agents. How damaging has that been to public confidence? That it was similar to the killing of Renee Good, where the administration came out and was very quick to try and get their message out, but footage, while not 100%, well, they could argue it wasn't conclusive, but it certainly, in both cases, seems to have been extremely damaging to public confidence.
What's happened in it's like a 1-2 punch, that the community here shared the videos before they made the announcements of, Renee trying to, run him over with the car. All of the doubt was sown there because we all have the videos. We have the raw footage. We've been sharing that as a community. And they didn't do an investigation before they made their announcements, right? They just went to do that. And so when that doubled down with Alex, and not only was he not at a protest, we have all, he was holding a phone, he was an ICU nurse. They really picked the wrong person to criminalize. This has been really, the word being used here is an inflection point where people can now say our federal government is gaslighting people. That is not an exaggeration at this point, and I think that enough people can see with their own eyes what they're being asked to believe. And then, of course, that doubles down with the demands. If you want ICE out of Minnesota, what they've, of course, told our governor, Tim Walz, who ran with Kamala Harris against Trump and Vance in the last presidential election, you have to turn over your voter rolls, social security numbers, etc., which basically is illegal for them to ask for. They're not reasonable requests. That's like a ransom note.
So you don't buy, Natalie, their claim that they need all this information because it will enable them to more accurately pinpoint those who are illegal immigrants and criminals within your state and in the country.
Absolutely not. And if you go to some of the facts, and this is what I think, a lot of our own country hasn't been able to see and hasn't been able to know, because our media is actually owned by many of the people supporting the Trump administration. So the truth is very difficult. It has to spread through community action. That Minnesota, if you were to guess how many undocumented immigrants there are in Minnesota, there's a ridiculous few. So Texas has over 2 million undocumented immigrants. Florida has over 1 million undocumented immigrants. You think New York, Chicago, LA. Why did they choose Minnesota? There are 130,000 undocumented immigrants here. Their choice of Minnesota may be that it was an easy city to make a demonstration of, because it's relatively small. It's not about undocumented immigrants. They're making an example of our state because we didn't vote for that administration.
And not all of the states you mentioned, but the likes of Texas, Florida, very much red states. Is there that sense in Minnesota that that's playing a part in it as well?
Absolutely, without question. And that's, to ask for the voter rolls is, like I said, exceptionally illegal. So if you want to track what's going on, what our leadership in Minnesota is trying to do, and we have excellent leadership, is keep the protests peaceful so that they are able to go to the court systems and actually have the court systems help with this. So our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, has taken this to the courts. It's being looked at right now. There's no conclusive, decisions. But of course, some of our courts federally, never mind our Supreme Court, have been compromised by partisan placements. Of course, we had an issue with the end of the last Democratic presidents. They were trying to replace people who had come out of the courts. So I don't know if you know the Merrick Garland issue. Things are stacked. And so to try and use the judicial court system right now is really the way to solve this peacefully. And I do hope that peace prevails. Minnesota is a very law-abiding state. We just had our Minneapolis chief of police, Brian O'Hara, Irish immigrant, of course, say that they have actually disarmed 900 different issues where there were armed escalations. They were able to disarm every single one of them without a fatality, right? So we have good structures, we have good law enforcement. There aren't people, undocumented running amok here. It's actually, it's not about immigration. This is about racial inequality, or you could say, it's got a lot of ethnic issues, which the United States has had for hundreds of years. Maybe was built on that with the genocide of the Native Americans here. And it's something, there's a through line that's coming. There's a term that I actually, it struck me quite significantly, called the imperial boomerang. And that it's a little bit of what you reap and what you sow, maybe coming back around to the United States, because it has had two different levels of how people are treated. And it very much has to do with the color of your skin. And that's actually in the baseline, that's what's happening here. So looking at the activity of ICE, they are not actually just looking for undocumented immigrants. They have been targeting civilians. They have been detaining civilians. They are asking for papers randomly. They are not using rule of law. They are not presenting warrants to enter either a car or a home or a business. These are really important things, because if you don't protect one person's human rights, civil rights, everyone's human rights and civil rights become at risk. When Alex was murdered, this inflection point, I think, has woken up a lot of people out of a bit of a dreamy sleep that, things will go back to normal and that things will be okay. And this is a point at which people all across the country and hopefully around the world will stand up and actually say, here the emperor has no clothes, that they can see what's happening, that they are actually getting the facts, that this needs to be called out because it's deeply wrong, and it's coming to a head. President Trump himself said, we're there in Minnesota for retribution.
Although he has, Natalie, just finally, after talks with Tim Walz, moved to scale back the federal presence. He's withdrawn the Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bravino. Do people see that as a genuine de-escalation, or are people worried, even with leadership changes, what we have seen happen with Renee Good and Alex Pretti could happen again?
I mean, I can't postulate that, but they're replacing Greg Bavino. They're not just removing him. The border czar is coming in. And he this morning has doubled down that this will not de-escalate. And that's something that literally, every Minnesotan is watching every minute here to see, what are the changes. It's possible, too, that they're not only not going to de-escalate, that they're actually doubling down, because we have information coming out that they have additional ICE detention centers being built, and that they may be actually reactivating an old military base called Fort Snelling to have additional detainees. And, not all of the detainees, like I said, are undocumented. Some of these places are to hold civilians. And even further, they're releasing some of these civilians in the middle of the night with no coats, no phone, sometimes even no shoes. So there's a group called Haven that has actually been staying right just outside the Whipple building so that they can help scoop up these people and give them shelter and give them clothing, give them food, and give them a burner phone so that they can help them reconnect to their families. So no, I don't think this is de-escalating. I think that they're trying to make a different PR approach, because Trump doesn't like to be unpopular. And he's saying that this is not looking good in our country or outside of it. And so, yes, they're probably going to make changes, and yes, they're going to make offers, but it's not actually changing what's happening on the ground here.
Unfortunately so. We do have to leave it there, but Natalie Nugent O'Shea, thank you so much for joining us live from Minnesota, and stay safe.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alan.
Continuing with events in Minnesota, and latest there has been reported, it hadn't initially been thought that just one agent had fired a weapon during their encounter with Alex Pretti in Minneapolis that led to his death, but it's been reported 2 federal officers fired shots during their encounter. That's according to reports by the AP news agency. It's citing a notice from the US Department of Homeland Security to US Congress. For more on this, I'm joined now by Sean Murray, journalist with the Irish Examiner, who was in Minneapolis last week. Sean, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So you were on the ground there last week. Can you describe what you saw, what the atmosphere in the city was like as these terrible events unfolded?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There was a couple of things that I really wasn't prepared for before I went over. First was just how cold minus 25 and minus 30 degrees feel. People are on the streets in these freezing cold conditions trying to protest about what's going on. Some of them staying out and standing there, no matter how well wrapped up, it is very cold in those conditions. But they feel so strongly about it that they do so. And then just the depth of the despair and the fear and the kind of trauma that's been inflicted upon the people of Minneapolis. They didn't ask for this. They didn't sign up for this. It's been going on now for 2 months, where Trump has sent in his agents who outnumber the police, the normal police, by 5 to 1. The police can't protect them from these guys. They're pulling people out of cars. They're pulling people out of their workplaces. And it's been going on every day for 8 weeks. So that just, it really struck home. And we were talking to taxi drivers or ordinary people in shops or people who actually work in the coalface. They were all feeling this fear. And then that fear has really ramped up to just such strong anger. Since the killing of both Renee Good and then Alex Pretti at the weekend. Yeah, not only are they creating this fear, but they're also killing these people on the streets.
And indeed, on that, Sean, I mean, there was outrage over Renee Good's killing, but it seems to have ramped up even further after the killing of Alex Pretti. And in particular, like with Renee Good, the rush from the US administration to come out and kind of control the narrative or paint the narrative for people, and the rush to describe Alex Pretti as a domestic terrorist, but when video footage emerged contradicting the official version of events, how significant was that, and how damaging has it been for the credibility of ICE, Border Patrol, DHS and the Trump administration itself, that people, they can see with their own eyes what happened?
Yeah, I think it's a credit to the people of Minneapolis, the way they're standing up and the different actions they're taking. Some people are delivering food to the homes of people who are afraid to leave their homes. Some people are going out to protest, but a lot of people are being observers. They're going out in the cold and watching what ICE is doing in their neighbourhoods. And we saw with the killing of Renee Good, she was shot in her car, and then immediately they said that she was a domestic terrorist and that she was trying to kill officers. Because there are so many people out on these streets who are videotaping what's going on or getting on their phones, we can see that that's absolutely not the case. And it was the same on Saturday as well. We could see that the narrative that was being pushed out by Stephen Miller, who's Trump's deputy chief of staff, and people kind of see as the architect of this. He said that Alex Pretti was trying to massacre officers, and from so many different camera angles, we can see that that's just not the case. And people in Minneapolis know what's happening, but I think it's so important for the rest of the country to see what's happening there. And I think that's finally, it should have happened after Renee Good, but it's definitely happening now, where public opinion is shifting, and most importantly, the Trump administration seems to be shifting. I mean, it's shifting somewhat. There's still ICE activities in the city, but the signals of de-escalation have started, and that's what the people on the ground there really need and really want.
And just finally, Sean, how on de-escalation, Trump has said he will, we heard him say earlier on, de-escalate a bit. Gregory Bavino removed and replaced by the border czar Tom Homan, I suppose, in overseeing the whole operation. But do people in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, believe tensions are genuinely easing? Do they believe that the federal officers will de-escalate what they're doing and bring tensions down a bit, or do you fear that this is the calm before another storm?
Well, a lot of people made the point to me that each day that these ICE agents stay there, each day that they're there, more harm, the capacity for more harm still increases. Even in the last day or so, even with this kind of softening of rhetoric from the Trump administration, there's some horrible videos still emerging from what's going on there. We have ICE operating near a preschool and throwing multiple rounds of tear gas as kind of surrounding residents are horrified. There was another awful video yesterday of a Hispanic woman. She's speaking Spanish and she's holding a child as a loved one is being taken away. And it looks like it's outside of a shop, outside of a store. The ICE agents tried to force their way into the Ecuadorian consulate in Minneapolis. Even despite this softening, this stuff is still happening. So the longer that these guys stay here, the capacity for things to worsen, I think, still very much remains.
Okay, worrying, and indeed strange times. Sean, thank you for giving us your first-person perspective on what's been happening there. Thanks for being with us on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care. Sean Murray there, journalist at the Irish Examiner, who saw himself firsthand what was going on when he was in Minneapolis last week.